Previously on Miss President.
Listening to your answers, starting with Betty. Betty, Sheng is an emerging culture, so we cannot put it under heritage yet. It is an emerging culture that we can look at ways of strengthening it and developing it, but still not curating it because it has not reached that level yet. When you look at things to do with heritage, we think of how many generations has it passed and has it remained the same? But you see, Sheng is still changing. So as a heritage, not yet. As an emerging culture, yes. And I think that's where your confusion came in, because people like associating heritage and culture. But we need to separate the two, okay? Then Dr. Pantoren, yes, the issue of research still comes up. And the one thing that was coming out more is your need to revive. And the point where it has reached with El Molo is a point of preserving what we have left. Harun, you need to empower yourself beyond your mother's garden, if I may say. And maybe if you learn more about the other communities that are not Cushitic or are not from Northeastern, then you will realize there are a lot of similarities than differences. It was so hard that we decided to allow all of you to remain in the academy today. And we hope that next time you will prove yourselves worthy of being in the academy. Thank you.
Full understanding of the benefits of well-being is central for the design and development of well-being interventions. As a consequence, the evaluation of the core benefits of well-being is of crucial importance for the appropriate allocation of resources towards such strategies. By the end, I might begin to listen and draw my own conclusions based on the presentation I keep hearing from these amazing contestants on the show. Which leads me to my next question. Is Kenya ready for a female president? This episode kicks off with 8 contestants instead of 9, as one of the contestants opted out of the contest.
Being in the academy was the best thing in my life. I have been able to interact with many beautiful ladies, women with different leadership potential, and I felt like I have learned a lot from them. And I decided to leave the academy at own volition. I had 2 engagements that I had to attend to. One is an interview for a job that had been postponed for some time. The other one is that now that we have an avenue called the Building Bridges through a handshake, so we were called women political leaders, about 50 of us, to go and contribute and say what we think women agenda should be. And that is what made me leave the academy.
Dr. Pantoren has since been appointed the chairperson of the board of Nyayo T-Zones and had to concentrate on her new appointment. We wish her all the best and hope that this show has contributed to making her a better leader. And now, a quick look at the contestants still in the academy. The contestants are competing at an individual level. And so how many or who will be going home tonight? Over 1,000 applications were received from all over Kenya, and from these, 70 contestants were shortlisted. After a series of auditions, 40 women were selected and they are battling it out at the academy, where they are going through a process of training, tasks, challenges, problem-solving activities, presentations and eliminations to eventually be elected Miss President. Together, let us follow each stage of this competition and watch these very capable women try to convince the judges and you at home, myself included, why they should make it to the next stage of the competition. Here are the counties that are represented by the remaining contestants. Now, Let's meet our esteemed judges for this episode.
I'm Dr. Zipporah Okoth. I'm a lecturer of film and theatre arts at Kenyatta University. I'm also the founder of the Lake International Pan-African Film Festival. I'm a gender consultant and a performing artist. I'm looking for people who are informed, presentable, firm, and have a purpose.
Hi, I'm Jerry Kirene. I work in the policy environment, helping various small groups lobby for better laws for business. I'm a tough judge. I'm no nonsense. The minute you come before me, you better know your stuff. If you don't, well, you can only expect a challenge.
The gears have shifted, terrain tougher, and you can feel the tension, the nerves, but also the quick comebacks, wit, and resilience of each one of our contestants as they continue on this path to leadership. Okay, back to my story about the well-being of the entire society. In our context in tonight's show, we ask, could social welfare be the same as standard of living? What does social welfare concern itself with? Let me hand you over to Mwalimu to train us on the role of corporate and state with regard to promotion of labor rights and social welfare issues.
Hi there, my name is Mary Campbell. I work with Kenya Human Rights Commission. I'll be speaking to a great team of women who are contesting for Miss President Kenya. I will be talking to them about the role of corporate and state with regard to promotion of labor rights and social welfare issues.
Karibu Mwalimu.
Asante.
Good morning, Your Excellencies.
Good morning.
Really happy to be here. So we will be discussing the role of state and corporates with regard to promotion of labor rights. So you will know that a few years ago, businesses really wanted to distance themselves from their responsibility as far as the realization of human rights is concerned. So businesses would say, it is not our role to oblige human rights. I mean, we have done business, we have paid you. What is this other extra that we are supposed to do as a business? But this discussion around business and human rights has actually gained traction, especially after 2011, when the UN commissioned a special representative to look at the entire scope of business and human rights and advise what is the role of business as far as protection and promotion of human rights is concerned. The framework gave us a broad understanding of the role of state, role of business with regard to protecting human rights, respecting human rights, and remedying when violations happen. So we now have this framework that we are calling the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. So international human rights laws and obligations require that states respect human rights and that states ensure that while businesses are conducting their affairs or their activities, they do not infringe on the rights of the citizenry. The second pillar is the protect. So the state is obligated to protect the rights of its citizenry. Do you have examples thinking about the pillar of protect where you feel the state failed to protect people against adverse human rights impacts occasioned especially by businesses?
A lot of the new things that are able to be done by the computers, you'll find like in most banks now, they have ATM machines that actually do everything that a teller can do, so you don't need a teller to be there. And I think the state needs to protect that because you find that a lot of people get declared redundant because the work that they could have done is replaced by digitalization. And the state can't do anything about it.
The state ideally knows that when you're working on permanent and pensionable basis, you are entitled to a pension at the end of your work. But if not, then the government has a requirement of a 31% gratuity for short-term, contracts, 5 years or less. But when you really look at some of the NGO sector in particular, where the payment of any salary or benefits is tied to availability of budgets. And most times, even when they're audited, then it doesn't come out like you're really not enforcing the rights of these workers. But ideally, it should be the government that is saying, for you to get your license, for you to be allowed to continue working in this country, you need to be able to give these employees what they're entitled to. Some of these things are more enforcement because the laws are there and they speak very clearly.
Yeah, so another key role of the state with regard to protection of human rights, labor rights, and social welfare matters, of course, is, as you would expect, the development of laws, policies, and regulations to ensure that labor rights are protected and enhanced. And relating to this also is the obligation to ensure that there is coherence in policies within the various ministries, departments, and agencies of the state. It is the work of the state to ensure, one, there is equality before the law, there is fairness in the application, actual application of the law, and that procedural and legal transparency is also observed. We started by asking ourselves, do businesses have a role in this whole conversation? And by respecting, businesses are expected, one, to avoid infringing or causing harm. You cannot have, for instance, a policy that promotes discrimination when already our laws disallow. Corporates must ensure that there are effective grievance handling mechanisms in place. They must know their human rights obligations. They must show what they are doing in terms of human rights obligations. I want you to just think about your counties, your own contexts and scenarios. So you will share with us what is happening in your counties. This is State in Action. What would you do in this new hot seat that you want to take up?
Thank you very much. I come from Taita Taveta County, where there's a lot of activity of mining. The people who are doing the labor work of excavation and mining do not have any protective gear. Even the working condition itself is not conducive. So maybe moving forward, for our community, we would think of a way of empowering the youth themselves in terms of giving them seed capital so that they can start their own mining sites. And the county government can actually do that, or empower them to buy their own protective gear and give them, training on safety and how they can apply the OSHA Act.
So in Nyeri County, we have the stone quarries. One of the things that is very predominant in those stone quarries is that when you look at how much the men and the women are paid, there's a very big difference. Again, there is the issue of sexual harassment in those stone quarries. As part of my solutions, I'll be very keen on having a conversation with the area members where those stone quarries are found. Address issues of wages, like better wages, and also contracts. Because most of them, if not all of them, are not hired on contracts. It is just a day-to-day basis. So in addressing those issues, I'd go back to the people and tell them, hey, this is what you have on the table, and use it to just better your lives.
Currently, the roads connecting from Garissa to Wajir is being constructed. The schools around that place, the communities that live there, and the school does not have enough chairs, tables, enough teachers. Toilets are not even existing. So my thinking, I was wondering, if these companies are able to construct such a road, why not support the communities around there as they move on? Because we are a country that is growing, and every day the structure is coming up. So why not ensure that these companies do it as CSR?
She raises the broad question of corporate accountability. Actually, I would like to look at it as corporate accountability more than corporate social responsibility. Excellent pitches, and it is no wonder that all of you have come this far. I'm really proud of each of you. I wish you the best.
If you want to be a president, how are you making sure that the environment of both the business people and those who are working in those companies or those corporates are able to be, one, enjoy their rights, while also the business thrives without anyone being exploited? How do you balance so that we are ensuring this thrives and that thrives. That has been very critical.
It boiled down to being practical. I learned ways in which I can have a message, back to my grassroots support base with solutions. So to me, it was a good session.
There is energy and encouragement that women who have a purpose, especially in leadership, there is a way we speak to each other, we encourage each other, and we let each other know, yes, you can do it, that nothing is impossible.
You are watching Miss President. Over 1,000 applications were received from all over Kenya, and from these, 70 contestants were shortlisted. After a series of auditions, 40 women were selected, and they are battling it out at the academy, where they are going through a process of training, tasks, challenges, problem-solving activities, presentations, and eliminations to eventually be elected Miss President. Together, let us follow each stage of this competition and watch these very capable women try to convince the judges and you at home, myself included, why they should make it to the next stage of the competition. Here are the counties that are represented by the remaining contestants. And now, a quick look at the contestants still in the academy. The coalitions have been disbanded and the contestants are competing at an individual level. A quick summary of today's training. The role of corporate and state with regard to promotion of labor rights and social welfare issues is crucial and well defined in law. There exists a UN framework based on a broad understanding on the role of the state based on 3 pillars, which are respecting human rights, protecting human rights, remedying human rights when violations happen.
Now, I will require you to identify at least 3 gaps in the labor laws and to propose solutions/remedies.
We have come to the end of day 1. Each one of the contestants is expected to come up with her own presentation in response to the assignment given. Day 2, and here we are. Remember, each assignment will be judged as a work of an individual, and I am so looking forward to seeing the presentations. Our contestants are always ready to give us their best shot in the true spirit of leadership. Greetings at home. Welcome. Time now for presentations. Your Excellency Shamala, you are.
The Occupational Safety and Health Act 2007 states that all employees must ensure the safety, health, and welfare of work of all persons working in his or her workplace is important. However, the Constitution does not address occupational and health and safety specifically, although it provides for the rights of everyone to fair labor practices. I'm proposing that the legislators should enact or should review the Act and make additional amendments on protection for pregnant women workers, especially in respect to pollution and hazardous environment. Then we have the gender concerns that the Constitution has provided for women's rights. However, there is no provision in the law of Kenya about breastfeeding. And so we ask that the Employment Act should ensure that the breastfeeding clause is inside the Act to allow women to breastfeed and lactate in workplaces. Thank you very much.
I would like to point out the right of casual laborers. These people are from the largest bulk of Kenya's labor industry. They, however, came up short as far as legal protection is concerned. They are openly covered under Section 37 of the Employment Act, which only does the bare minimum. The Act stipulates that an engagement between a casual laborer and an employer gains contract status or employee status if it laps 3 months. So if you look at Kenya being a country that relies so much on casual laborers, this is a huge injustice on their end. And there are some things that we can do even as an individual level, because day to day we are engaged or we get to meet these people, you can always empower them with information. There's a thin line between the legal and the illegal strike. These lines put employee within the range of fire and easily could find themselves bearing the brunt of the law, such as being in breach of contract. My solution is that there is room for legislative proactiveness and at a personal level where you can also empower people with information, especially the group that belong to the casual laborers. The minimum wage is a big problem. Thank you so much.
Kenya has taken progressive steps towards addressing the child rights in order to curb child labor. However, in some communities, children forfeit their future potential by working in agricultural farms, industrial factories, and stone quarries at the expense of their safety and education. These forms of labor violate Article 53 of the Constitution that protects children's rights to safety, protection, and deny them the right to access education. The labor gaps are: 1. Exactly what constitutes hazardous work and specification of light duties is missing. The minimum age law does not protect children working outside the scope of formal employment contract or in circumstances where children get no benefit for their labor. There is a gap for a child-centered policy. This is assessing the impact of labor on the physical and psychological well-being of the child, an institutionalized monitoring mechanism and measures of protection to children engaged in work. I, as a president, recognize the need for a child-centered policy that takes into account the voice of the child. Children's voice must be heard. Finally, my government commits to sufficient resources for child labor enforcement efforts. Thank you.
Social media has become part and parcel of our community and has been a cause for conflicts between employers and employees. While we have some private companies that do have rules and regulations governing the employees, we do not have one that is standard for all employers. And therefore, the solution to this is that there is need to have this law incorporated. The law needs to set expectations for appropriate behavior and ensure that an employee's post will not expose the company to legal problems or public embarrassment. The second gap that I identified is on enforcement mechanisms of new regulations. And in this one, I particularly looked at the Breastfeeding Mothers Bill for 2017. This particular bill was well thought out. It even says that a breastfeeding mother should be given about 40 minutes to go and do the breastfeeding exercises that they need. However, since the gazettement of this bill, it has not been properly implemented. And one of the issues that I noticed is because I feel that the fine that was indicated is very low. It's not punitive enough. Number one, an immediate inspection needs to be done for all organizations to check who has not complied with this. Also, I feel that the fine needs to be increased to include loss of business license for those that have not implemented.
So in 2015, we watched in horror as a 21-year-old girl from Kilifi was tortured to death while she served in a foreign country. After her death, investigations revealed that she had signed 2 contracts for her work. In Kenya, she signed her contract in the English language. In the foreign country, she was made to serve or to sign another contract in their language. Now, this new contract denied her freedom of movement and association. In protecting Kenyan workers who live and work abroad, I am seeking an amendment to the Employment Act number 11 of 2017 to expressly state that all contracts for Kenyans seeking to work abroad to be drafted in English and Kiswahili, with the contract being final both in Kenya and the receiving state to avoid contract substitution. I seek to protect employees from discriminations on the grounds of religion, pregnancy, and their marriage status. Lastly, I seek to protect workers against sexual harassment in the workplaces by ensuring that the workers are at the forefront of developing their anti-harassment policies to capture all emerging issues.
The 3 gaps that I'm going to discuss are: 1, a description of some terms in the WIBA Act of 2007. We realize that there is the Director of Occupational Safety and Health Services. In the definition in the preliminary, is just given as Director of Occupational Health, and this has become a conflict. It has become a problem, especially when workers are seeking compensation. So I propose that this Act is revised to conform to the devolved system of government and to give provision for officers who are working in the same capacity for ease of compensation of workers. The second one is sexual harassment. We realize that in the Sexual Harassment Act of 2007, Section 6, the description of what is sexual harassment is not clear. So I propose an amendment to give a checklist and to give the remedy for sexual harassment. And lastly, when you look at the Employment Act, Section 29, it has given provision for maternity leave, but it has excluded pregnancy. Women must be given provision for lighter work. Kenya must recognize the need for special care for pregnant mothers, because SDG number 3 talks about, healthcare of women. Thank you so much.
Sexual Harassment Act of 2007 requires only employers who have 20 employees to have a policy. This is not reflective of the industry of the micro sector. If you look at salons, look at boutiques, look at electronic shops, 83.4% of employment exists there. So we need to have a policy. And I suggest that we develop and disseminate standards through SME forums, through the proposed SME authority, and then we grant certifications to those who comply. And then, of course, we have a database of sexual harassment where we can track reporting and prosecution. On the second gap of equal pay, I looked at Section 5 of Employment Act, which requires the employer to ensure that men and women are paid equally. But then in Africa, 49% of the CBA agreements don't reflect this. So I propose that all employee unions be empowered to put this pay parity in their agreements. And we also do performance management. We do job analysis and evaluation. We empower women to negotiate and even to sue where they have been discriminated against. Thank you.
The Employment Act, Section 6, goes ahead and defines the concept of sexual harassment. This law is all about employers, and more employers, and very silent on mechanisms by which employees can report sexual harassment when it happens. The remedy, therefore, is to amend this act to include an outline on the burden of the employer to create safe spaces for employees to report sexual harassment without the fear of retaliation. Section 35, Part 1, states that contracts for daily wages can be terminated without notice. The Act is silent on breaches conducted against terms that are not written down because they are difficult to prove. The remedy, therefore, is to make it mandatory for all contracts to be written and duly signed by both parties, including witnesses. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration Act. Now, this act imposes the duty on the employer to protect the health, safety and welfare of employees and all persons who are lawfully present at the workplaces at the time of a tragedy. My proposed remedy, therefore, is to make certification, for OSHA compliance a mandatory requirement and make provisions to compel all employers to compensate employees for injuries, disablement and death at market rate and in real time. Thank you.
So we'd just like to give you an overview of our thoughts. I'd like to give a chance to Judge Njeri to start.
When it comes to issues of policy, and you're specifically addressing policymakers, you've really got to be very clear about what it is you expect them to do to ensure you get your goals met. So my only encouragement to you, even as you continue to think about policy issues, is to look at the bigger picture and see how things tie into each other so that you make a very succinct argument so that if somebody sees it, they say, pop, 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 this is it. And this is how we need to address it. And I hope that helps you.
I saw a bit of inconsistencies in terms of the issues. For instance, speaking about the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and that the Constitution does not address occupational health and safety issues, which is not correct. We have to remember what a constitution is. A constitution is basically a blueprint for the country, and we would not expect that a constitution would entail every detail, and that is why we have acts of parliament that are
enacted to bring in the other facets that are missing. But I do think that the presentations were good. You guys did put in a good job.
Okay, so we'll allow the judges to step out. My question to you is, who do you want to nominate and why? Don't tell me. You know what to do or where to go.
The lessons that we went through in terms of the employment and labor laws were not translated into her task.
When I had her speaking, it was as though she was acting. It was not genuine.
She was reading too much and we were not able to get exactly what she's talking about.
She did not know that we already have a bill that addresses breastfeeding for mothers.
You are watching Miss President. Over 1,000 applications were received from all over Kenya, and from these, 70 contestants were shortlisted. After a series of auditions, 40 women were selected and they are battling it out at the academy, where they are going through a process of training, tasks, challenges, problem-solving activities, presentations and eliminations to eventually be elected Miss President. Together, let us follow each stage of this competition and watch these very capable women try to convince the judges and you at home, myself included, why they should make it to the next stage of the competition. Here are the counties that are represented by the remaining contestants. And now, a quick look at the contestants still in the academy. The coalitions have been disbanded and the contestants are competing at an individual level. Time to eliminate. 1, 2 or 3. I have no clue. We'll find out from the judges. So last time you were impressed. So impressed, that you didn't send anyone home. This time?
By and large, we are still impressed.
This is more your area. Thoughts? Are you impressed? Do you like what they did?
I think people took time to study a bit, research, and just read a bit. Well, even though some reading went into it, there were a bit of contradictions here and there. Yeah, so you can tell you read, but read only halfway. Yeah, so those contradictions also did come out very well. You have an expert
sitting there wondering, wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Improvement?
Yeah, there's quite some improvement. I'd say 50% of the people are very good. The other 50 are good. A lot of people are looking at implementation as a law, yet the Constitution is very clear. It gives us the rules on what guidelines to follow. But how we implement it is very discrete on who is implementing and in what industrial area. So it cannot be one uniform fits all, you know. So how does it how does it work with who and who? Because there was even one was talking about occupational safety measures. Yes. As in, we have got different aspects of occupations. What would work well for an artist as an occupation safely will not work well for an engineer or a constructor or a filmmaker for the matter. So
there's something you said last time. Leadership.
That leadership is not a popularity contest.
Expound.
For many people, I think leadership has been defined by how many people like me. If I get up somewhere, can I rally a crowd? Can I get them frenzied? Which is one aspect of leadership. Okay. But leadership should be a calling, because you are representing a constituency and you must represent what it is that they need as a constituency. Right. And I think that's been the main challenge for some of the contestants in the House. But then the question is, why did they come?
We'll be right back. Stay with us. It's time to find out who is going to stay and who's going to go home. 8 contestants, 3 seats in front. Who stay? And who's going?
Hello, ladies. Yes, we're very excited about this moment because, as usual, it is making us get more excited that this show is getting its objective right. Considering the people we have now in the House, we can see very intelligent, informed, and leaders who can speak their voices out. And that is a very good effort on your part, and we believe on our part too. Today on the bench, we have Honorable Judge Njeri, and we have Honorable Judge Mary, who was also your trainer. We would like to be able to get the people who are going to be on the elimination bench, and then from there, we will see what next. I'll hand over to Judge Njeri.
Thank you, Judge Zippy. And if you hear your name, please come forward. Irene Mayaka, please come forward. Immaculate Shamala, please come forward. So as tradition has been in the show, we're going to ask you some questions. Irene Mayaka, please come. So in your presentation, you talked about us adopting or developing a social media policy for Kenya, if I'm right. And in your view, from what you observed, did you think that's something that could have been made into a national policy that you expected people to adopt?
I felt it's something that should be made into a national policy. And my reason for feeling like this is because when I had a look at the two companies, yes, they had rules, but they were not uniform. My reason for wanting to have this as a national policy is so that we have one that is regular, one that is uniform, that can be adopted for all the other companies as well. And when it's a situation where it needs to go to a law, to a court of law for clarifications, then they can use one standardized regulation to be able to then tackle the issues that come up.
At the same time, you expect that if a company does not comply by the pregnancy bill, the breastfeeding bill, then they should lose their business license. That's what you stated, right?
Yes.
How do you think this is going to impact women in the workplace? Don't you see as if women are going to lose their jobs because there will be a liability?
No.
Really? Have a seat.
So Shamala Immaculate, take your spot. Shamala, in the last few episodes, during your presentations, you have been reading more than presenting.
True.
And we have noted that over and over again. And it seems no change is forthcoming. So why is that? 2, I will give you another 3 minutes right now to present what you are supposed to present in the morning.
Okay, I'll start with the exercise. The gap that is there, and I'll take a topic that is of concern to me. That is gender and mainstreaming gender in the laws of Kenya. And the gap that is there, and what I wanted to bring out, and I agree that probably I didn't, was that we have the maternal protection bill. However, in the law we have a space or a gap where the mothers don't have spaces to go and lactate or to go and breastfeed their children. And that's why I was saying probably the Employment Act should mainstream such a gender concern into law where it can help the legislators facilitate a process of protecting the women and the children. The children are not denied to do what? To be breastfed their mother, because it's all about just working. They ask the mothers to work the whole day. And that is what I wanted to passionately bring across.
Okay. Shamala, one thing is very clear. You are a very strong character, but you don't trust your mind. When you are speaking to people and you are not having eye contact with them, then you are speaking to your book down here. If right now I was speaking to you and I'm looking at Irene Mayaka here, I do not know whether you will be getting my points or where the dialogue could be. You get that disconnect? And that is how the crowd feels when you look down throughout and you don't give them eye contact. And that body language and all that, it tells a lot on how much do you grasp whatever you're talking about, and how much confidence do you have in whatever you're saying? How much should they trust what you're telling them if you cannot trust it enough to say it confidently? Thank you. We have listened to Shamala and Irene, and a few things are coming out that, yes, you understand what labor laws are, but you do not know how to differentiate between where the gap is in the law and where the gap is in implementation. And in almost, I think, quite a number of the people in the House, there's a difference between the law is there. Maybe if we add another rule to it, then it means we can just have to implement it. But then there are these instances where the law is already there. It's the implementation that is lacking. And so we should not say that a law is not there when it already exists. So when we're talking about a gap in the labor laws, let us be very clear about what laws are. I'll start with Irene. Sometimes as a country, to be able to make people grow and to motivate people to take up businesses so that we can also get taxed, we should think more on capacity building than punishment. Because punishment just kills businesses, it kills morals, and it also takes our economy lower and lower. Shamala, you talked about a lot of laws. You have a chance to change the nation, but you're listening more to what is written than more to the voice of your people. And you are not trusting yourself. And then we ask, this is something that we have countered over and over again. You need to put your things in point form so that you speak to us. And at this level of the competition, public speaking skills is not something that you need to be trained on. If you were to address the people who are working for you, and each time you go to them, you read everything from top to bottom, wouldn't it be cost-saving to just send them an email? What difference would it make if you sent it to them and they read it, and if you went and stood before them and put your eyes down on the paper throughout without having eye contact with them? And for that reason, Shamala, we felt that we will give you another chance in the outside world to continue learning all these aspects. But in the academy, we just want to congratulate you for coming this far. And you are a great leader. One thing that has come out, I think, even with our guest trainer today, is that, Shamala, you have a very strong character. When you stand before people, even before you speak, they know that this is a strong leader. But now what we would like you to have is to put your heart into whatever you do. Do not doubt yourself. Just pick that one point and ride on it. Okay, thank you so much. Irene Mayaka, you have another chance in the academy. You can go and take your seat. Ladies, I think so far, when I look at all the faces in the house, I see I'm as president. But you have to make yourself be that person. Let the world choose you. Thank you.
I go back home. I continue stepping into the national spaces. I want to go and build and continue building my community. There's so much left that I have not done. There are issues of the squatter question in Trans Nzoia. I will be in terms of advocating between the county and national government to ensure that the historical land injustice issue is not left out, especially now when the country is in the moment, a constitutional moment, where we are thinking of a referendum.
Ms. President Shamala from Trans Nzoia County, I have had the honor of meeting you in the Ms. President Academy, of interacting with you and watching you grow in your leadership journey. And I hope that the lessons from this academy takes you far in your path to wanting to become a woman leader in Trans Nzoia County. And I wish you all the best.
I didn't even think I would be on probation, especially the fact that it was the last two people. Maybe I'm being biased to myself, but having listened to each and every lady, and especially when we were told to answer questions again, I didn't think I featured in the last two. Right now, I'm just seeing everyone as competition. And so I'll just keep, what I keep saying, I will keep doing things my way, being myself, and just working on improving who I am and what I can do.
After a busy and highly charged day at the academy, it's time to take a breather. For some, probation calls for a meeting with self in order to assess or change strategies so as to remain in the competition. For others, the tears and goodbyes to newfound friends
will close the day.
Pass! Umesikia vile Jaji amesema about putting or organizing your thoughts in point form. Also kumbuka to connect with your audience you are talking to. I mean, if you need to address an audience unasoma my notes huko na nini na nini, hata kama ni from a paper or an iPad for .coms, atafanya utume email. So what would it be? Talk to your audience ama utume email? Anyway, thoughts, comments, suggestions, compliments, tweet us on @media_focus, Facebook ni @mediafocus on Africa, Instagram, myselfie @mediafocus on Africa. I'd like to hear from you. I am guided each day by these 3 questions. What are you fixing? What are you making? And who are you helping? Juliana Rotich, Kenya technologist and social entrepreneur and co-founder of Ushahidi. See you next week.